I would like to welcome everyone to the Germantown Design Review Commission meeting for August 2018. I'd like to establish a quorum, so please call roll.
Mr. Hurley?
Present.
Mr. Landwehr?
Here.
Mr. Schmidt?
Here.
Mr. Sherman?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Alderman Owens?
Here.
Chairman Bruns?
I am here. Thank you. We do have a quorum. And for the minutes of our July meeting, is there anyone that has read and agrees with the minutes? So we may approve them?
Make a motion to approve. Second.
Very good. Please call roll.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Hurley?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Landwehr?
Yes.
Chairman Bruns?
Yes, the July minutes are approved. Thank you. And for our fourth item tonight will be the consent agenda. There are 3 items currently on the consent agenda as it is shown, and an additional item has been added in executive session. Our first, 4A, Germantown Village Square, approval of revised sign policy. 4B, the Germantown Village Square, approval of project directory sign, rather. 4C, Apple, approval of a wall sign. And item number 6 then becomes 4D, McDonald's, the approval of the menu board signs. Is there anyone in the commission or in the audience that would like to see any of these items removed from the consent agenda? Seeing and hearing none, I'd like to remind all the commissioners that by voting on the consent agenda, you are agreeing to each of the cases listed and those cases added tonight. You have read and reviewed each of the applications in subcommittee and in executive session with staff and the applicant and have determined no further discussion or presentation of the case is necessary. I will entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda with items 4A, B, and C, and item 6.
I'll second that.
Please call roll.
Mr. Landwehr?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Hurley?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Chairman Bruns?
Yes, the consent agenda has been approved, so those of you on that may feel free to leave, while the rest of us will discuss the 2 remaining items. Thank you. Item number 5, home-centric, approval of a wall sign. Staff presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The application before you tonight is an approval for a wall sign for home-centric. The property is located within the village shops at Forest Hill Shopping Center. This is the vicinity map to show the location of the shopping center, which is located at Poplar Forest Hill, Irene Road. The proposed application is for approval of a sign that would require a exception from this board from this approved sign color. This is Pantene 555C. It is the color that is within the sign policy. The applicant is asking that you approve a different preference. The original request that came before you was for a different 363C color. The applicant's alternate color, and this is the rendering of the sign that would be against the building with that color. His alternate sign is a 364C Pantene, which is a little bit darker color than what they originally asked for, but it is not quite as dark as the 555C color that was approved as part of the sign policy. This is the alternate color on their rendering and along with their sign that they're proposing. The original application that you saw in subcommittee showed this sign with the lighter green, but it also showed the sign with red and orange dots as part of that signage. You indicated as part of the subcommittee recommendation that the applicant tone down the shade of the proposed green color and add the addition of matte finish to the color so that the color was closer to the approved shopping center sign policy, and also requested that they prepare a color rendering of the sign against the building facade so that you could see the dots and how they would look against the building if the color of the building would help tone down those colors. The applicant has chosen to drop the request for the red and orange dots, and the whole sign, the entire sign, including the text, would now be in one color, which would be the green. Again, this is the alternate color, which is a little bit closer to the sign policy, but not quite the dark, deeper forest green that the policy has approved. This is what they're asking for approval for tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions. The sign, other than the color, the sign meets all of the ordinance and sign policy requirements.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Very good. Would the applicant or a representative of the applicant like to step forward, please? Very good. Y'all, thank you for being here tonight. If you would, please state your name and address for the record. And then if you have a presentation or have some comments that you'd like to share, then we'd like to hear them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I am Wade Laufenberg from Bell's Outlet, Bradenton, Florida. I'd like to thank the Design Review Board for having us here tonight. Our company is 103 years old, very successful, long history throughout the Southeast. We are introducing the new home-centric concept store, and the second ever that we're doing in the entire country is in Germantown. We're very much looking forward to being part of the community here in Germantown and having our successful business. And we've modified our sign and come up with an alternative, what we are calling our alternate color number 2. It's much closer to the to the green, the hunter green, that's part of the master sign program. I would say that due to the position of our box in the shopping center, it's not visible from the road. It's really buried back there, and that we're getting a color that, especially from the parking lot, is going to look very similar to the approved color. You know, this being our second store, and the branding that we've put into this is very important for our company to have that branding statement.
Thank you. I will say we're very excited to have you. We're very excited you've chosen Germantown as your second location. We also understand with a second store the value of branding and color selections and all. And with that, I'll open it up to other commissioners to feel free to speak to that if you would like.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, maybe I do have a question going back to staff. If I could, Sheila, remind me, I was not on the DRC, and we touched on it when we were in the executive session, but I think the adjacent store to this is our Sprouts grocery store. And I know that they had I think they had a similar, I was, like I said, not on the design review commission at the time, but I think they had a similar request for a green that maybe was not in compliance with the policy. Can you just sort of give us that quick 30-minute update, 30-second update?
You're correct, Alderman. Their brand color is a color that is lighter than the color that is approved for the sign policy. They chose, because that green was not a color that the board at that time was comfortable approving, they chose to go with the yellow theme on the building so that the sign would be seen. And they put the darker hunter green on the sign that is on the ground sign.
The hunter green that was approved in the
That was approved as part of the
in the
policy.
sign policy. Okay. And you also touched about this in the executive session, but just to make sure I understand, the shopping center, while they are okay with the color green that the applicants have selected, they are not really desirable or desiring to change their sign policy.
That's correct. And the property management for the shopping center is here tonight. they only have one other customer that is going to be coming in, or tenant that's going to be coming in, and that tenant has already chosen to use Vanilla Bean. So therefore, they feel that there is no need to update the policy.
Okay. I guess, do you want to speak to that? Are you with the shopping center?
Hi. Blair Bonicelli with Epic Real Estate Partners. I'm the fund manager. Thank you again for your time this evening and allowing us to submit multiple variations to our sign color. Addressing the sign criteria, two reasons why we're not updating it. First is they have a planned grand opening for 9/27, so I could not get that done in enough time. And there was some miscommunication back and forth between our teams on the sign colors. And the second large tenant that's going to backfill 24,000 square feet has agreed to go with a Vanilla Bean for the time being. But I would say respectfully that their box is a little bit more visible from the street, and it's not their second store in the country. Burke's Outlet and Bell's is a very significant company and retailer in the Southeast, and they're really passionate about the sign because it is their second store. I think, you know, Sprouts, respectfully, I have a great relationship with Ted Frumkin. I know them very well, understand. I think if it wasn't their second location in the entire country and a brand new concept, they'd probably be more open to going with the Vanilla Bean, but you know, they put a lot into it, a lot of planning, and they love Germantown. They chose us. Jim Reed came to me and said, Blair, this is where we want to be. And so I think, you know, we're backfilling 2 boxes that have been vacant for a significant amount of time. We have the Vanilla Bean on the pylon signage that you guys so graciously allowed us to put up, which is why we were able to backfill these boxes. And this would be the last variance that we would come to you with. I actually declined a tenant today that we signed a lease with this evening by the name of Rock and Roll Sushi in Phase 2 who wanted to do a red guitar. And I said, nope, can't do it because I'm not amending my sign policy, and Germantown has their rules and regs, and we're following that. But HomeCentric is backfilling 14,500 square feet that's been vacant for 10 years. And so I just would ask you passionately and kind of plead with you guys if we could get this one done, I'd owe you one. So.
And I wish that's how it worked. But it doesn't. Everything you've said, we share the same exact passion. There's no question of that. Having this tenant here with 10 years vacancy, we have all the same passion as citizens.
Yeah.
But we sit in a position where we have to make a decision for everyone.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that being said, all of us have commented toward your policy, the off-white, the forest green. We felt very good about the conversation we had 2 weeks ago, and we all left that meeting very positive about a solution. This was a bit of not a surprise, but I think we, as a commission, I'll speak for myself, but then as a commission also, are still leaning toward the Vanilla Bean with no less passion than you've shared or you have shared. Okay. Moving forward, I don't know how you want to proceed, but does anyone else have any further comments before we proceed?
I would just say the Vanilla Bean or the center's sign policy green, which is the hunter green. Is that right? Or?
Forest green.
Forest green, sorry.
Label forest green. Yeah.
Wade, do you have anything further? Go ahead.
I just have a question. We're only talking about the wall sign, correct?
The building sign.
The building sign. Are they on the ground-mounted sign, or is there a ground-mounted sign?
There are 3, and those are in the compliant colors in white. They've been up already. So yes, there are 3 ground-mounted signs, one on Forest Hill Irene, one on Poplar, and one on Poplar Pike, and they are white or Vanilla Bean.
Okay.
And those are already installed. So this is the one variance. And the reason the surprise is that we were all good, and then it made it to the head of the entire Bells and Burke's company, and I think it trickled back down with some, hey guys, hold on a second. So
I can understand that just
Yeah.
the same, absolutely. As you see this center and all, and see the consistency with it, I think that also plays into your color palette, into the sign also, and so that all weighs on us also for this color choice on this particular sign.
Sure.
So, Mr. Chairman, that begs the question, I guess, and again, I know the center very well, but not having served on the DRC for that long, are there other variations to the policy within the center that you can think of?
I know that Target's red and Marshall's is blue, but I'm not sure if they're a variation.
Mr. Chairman, if I remember correctly, because I was on this committee when Target came in, and the color red, I think, was a variant. We had a lot of discussion on that.
You're correct, Mr. Sherman. The Target red was added to the policy, but Target also, that red was approved as part of that big box change that came through at that point in time.
Based on
Okay, thank you.
overall square footage?
So it is part of the
Well, let me clarify, it's not the Target brand red, but it is the red of the Target sign that is up at that store now. And that was approved, again, as part of that whole review of the big box policy changes.
Are there other, is this anywhere else in the shopping center?
The hunt, is that the?
That's the
555?
approved sign policy
That
green.
is-
Do other signs have
That's
this?
the background for the Sprout sign on the ground sign.
So if you change the policy to this, then you're sort of putting them, I guess, out of, and I'm not sure if this would even be approved as,
I know next month's application if we change the green.
you know what?
I know next month's application if we change the green.
I'm just trying to think through this.
It's a difficult spot, so, I mean, there's nothing to be said. Further, I mean, from us, we can
Okay.
proceed as you wish.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you both very much. Thank you for traveling in and coming to see us. Well, I will entertain a motion for item number 5.
If I'm not mistaken, we make the motion as presented and then the vote. Yeah. Right. Getting back to it. How you have it there. Thank you. Make a motion to approve a wall sign for Home Centric located at 3150 Village Shops Drive, with the sign color to be the Pantone color. Can you flip to that slide?
It was,
364? C.
I was just down there.
That's correct.
Second?
Second.
Please call roll.
Mr. Smith?
No.
Mr. Sherman?
No.
Mr. Langweir?
No.
Alderman Owens?
No.
Mr. Hurley?
No.
Mr. Schmidt?
No.
Chairman Bruns?
I am also a no, and so disappointedly give you the result that the color is not approved, but our excitement is still very much with you in the opening of your store. So thank you for being here. He'll tell. After emotional number 5, we'll move on to item number 7, the Goodwin's Farm PUD. Staff presentation, please.
Thank you. The final item on the agenda before you is the Goodwin Farms Plan Unit Development, Final Plan Phase 1, which includes 21 lots and common open space. This is the location of the entire Goodwin Farms development. They received a Plan Unit Development approval for their outline plan from the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for the approximately 100-acre site here. The part that you are seeing today is a little over 20 acres. It is Phase 1. And it consists of 21 lots as mentioned. These are standard 15,000 square foot lots. They do have shorter front yard setbacks and standard rear setback of 25 feet. This first plan, Phase 1, was approved by the Planning Commission. They are before you tonight for 3 components. The final plan is such for the design review components, the landscape plan, which also includes a lighting plan and a tree mitigation plan, and finally their subdivision entrance feature. So to orient you, this is north actually. This is the entrance to the plan unit development, and these are the 21 lots that are being considered as the first component of their design review approval. A large part of this first phase is common open space here with a retention area and a walking trail around it. And also the streetscape along Winchester. This is a enlargement of that streetscape along Winchester, and also a plan view of how the retention pond would look with the walking trail. In that common open space, it would include a shade structure you see here that could be used for the neighborhood as an amenity. This is the tree mitigation plan. The applicant is proposing a tree mitigation plan that is holistic for the entire 10 phases of the development. This was discussed at Planning Commission, and per Planning Commission's recommendation, at the end of each phase, the tree mitigation will be assessed. They will see how many trees have been removed and how many have been mitigated at the end of that phase. They will be keeping a running total, and once they hit phase 3, they will then come to the planning division to try to sum out then where they are at with their tree mitigation, meaning if they have covered all the trees being replaced on their own site, or if then those trees need to be dedicated to the city per the requirement in section 22-103. So that was the plan, the tree mitigation plan they proposed to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission recommended approval to be considered then by the Design Review Commission, which we are doing tonight. Another component of the tree plan is that the applicant is proposing that rather than placing 2 trees at the front of each yard, as is required per the code, they are asking that those trees be planted anywhere on the lot, be it the front or the rear. Part of the reason for that is they are planting street trees as part of their overall mitigation, and they didn't want the street trees to conflict then with 2 additional trees in the front yards. For some reason this isn't advancing, but so that is another component of the tree mitigation plan. They're asking for an exception to the requirement to plant those 2 trees anywhere on the lots. As we discussed in executive session, that that would be okay for this phase. The commission did request that at future phases maybe that be assessed, because once we get to smaller lots in future phases, 7,000 square foot lots, that might just be too many trees on the sites in general. So they would like to revisit that as the lots get smaller with future phases. In terms of the lighting plan, the applicant did revise the lighting plan. Oh, now it's going. And here, as you can see, the values zero out before they hit the lot lines. These are lamps along the walking path. So while the values are higher than what is typically allowed in a residential area, there will be no spillover onto actual residential lots. This is the common open space here with the retention area, and then this is still some of the drainage area for the common open space. So there won't be any spillover onto residential lots. The final portion of the approval is the subdivision entrance feature. This is at the front of the development. As you can see here, the entrance, there would be a sign here. This is limestone, and it would be etched and then painted black. This does conform with all the requirements as outlined in the code under subdivision entrance features and signage for subdivision entrance features. That concludes staff's presentation. The applicant is here for any questions.
Thank you. Would the applicant mind stepping forward, and if you have something prepared, feel free to share, or if you just want to field some questions, that'd be okay too.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, can we ask the staff a question first?
You may, pardon me.
Are these, I saw on the mailboxes, are
Yes.
those part of the approval tonight? Is that what we're doing?
So we are looking at this. This probably will not be approved until the construction plan phase because they provided a suggestion that you did see at the subcommittee. The suggestion is to locate it here. This suggested location still actually needs to be run by the post office to see if they will accept it. And Mr. Ross is talking with administration if the city will ask for a waiver. So they provided this information as a concept of what they could look like and where they could possibly be, but this is not finally being approved at this point.
Then is this going to come back, or how is that going to work? Or just going to be approved administratively?
Well, this is the first time we've dealt with these, so we don't have a process in place yet. We would like to see first if we would get a waiver, and if we get a waiver, then this
Yes.
requirement obviously goes away. If we don't get a waiver, I'm going to defer to Ms. Pounder what she would think would be the best way to deal with this, if we should bring it back to the commission, or if this is something we could potentially look at administratively.
I will also mention, as part of this discussion, we are looking at doing mailboxes that has a consistent design for the city of Germantown, so that is still under review. So as part of the review of this, at the point where we know either we're not going to get a waiver or we're not going to apply for a waiver, we will at that point make a decision about what they need to look like and bring that back to the board. And then there may be it may be this or it may be something different at that point. And then this plan would have to adhere to whatever we determine that the city mailboxes need to look like for the properties.
Very good. And I think the postmaster is going to play a large role in this also.
So you will see the mailboxes, you either see the consistent design that we are proposing, or you will see this back before you for the final design, one or the other.
Yeah, I just hate to have them come back after they've already gone through the approvals and
Right. It's going to be more of you just knowing us giving you the information and letting you know this is what came out of our discussion in determining what the mailboxes are going to look like. Again, it could be just becoming our consistent design, or it could be something completely different. But either way, you will know, this board will be part of that decision and know what that's going to be.
And so I suppose if they conformed, if this meets that, then it's approved.
Yes.
If it's something different and they agreed to go with whatever it is, then they're approved as well. They wouldn't have to come back either way.
That's
so.
correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
That's fine.
Any other questions for staff? Very good. Very good. Please state your name and address for the record.
Mike Hammond, landscape architect with Kimley Horn, 6750 Poplar Avenue, Memphis, Tennessee. Everything that Sarah presented is spot on. We appreciate the opportunity to be here. Be happy to answer any questions. Paul Ryan with Regency Home Builders is also here if you have any questions for him.
Very good. Thank you. And I know we just had the two items for the most part in between the two meetings. One was photometrics, and we've got that figured out. I know that some of the conversation in subcommittee surrounded itself with safety. I guess we found a way to achieve safety and zero out by the residential. So,
yes.
Very good.
Can I ask one question on that?
Sure.
In the northwest corner, which is the top right of the screen on the photometric plan, it clearly delineates where your property line is. What is because it looks like there's a little bleed over. It's not, you're definitely zeroing it out before you're hitting the residences, but beyond that property line, it looks like there are a couple of .2s, .1s. It's out in the middle of the road. I'm not sure if Kingston View Drive is a part of your development or not. I just wanted to ask, I didn't ask staff when it was time to ask staff questions, but what does it need to be at property line? Because there's a couple of .1s, .2s that bleed over. It's probably not critical, but just wanted to ask the question. In the top right corner of the screen, or just before that.
So right here?
Yep. They're not all zero beyond the property line, but again, they are zeroing out before they hit residences.
Yes.
So, but what is it at the property line? Is there any,
Property line, I don't have the plan in front of
and I thought I remember something about .1 or .2, but
So they zero out before they hit the property line. So your question is, at what point?
well, they don't. There's a couple that are .1 and .2 over. I'm being picky, yes, but I just wanted to ask the question because.
They're right at the right-of-way line, I see that there.
They're right at the back of the curb.
Yeah.
It's a .1. And then beyond the back of the curb, they zero out. And that's the Kingston View Drive is a future phase of Goodwin Farms.
Okay.
Bleeding upon themselves.
No, they're not hitting the homes, so. I just wanted to ask the question because everything else was internal. And then there was that little bleed over there, so.
So I see what you're saying, yes, it looks like it hits right at the sidewalk line, that it'll be .1 right at the property line. The board can grant a waiver for that or an exception for that because it's not zero right at that property line.
Again, just a question.
Good. Anything else on photometrics for the most part? Entrance design, all that, common spaces, I think everything is very well done. Certainly, if any of the other commissioners have comments to that degree, please speak up. The other more discussed item, obviously, was tree mitigation. And you've shared that conversation countless times at this point. And so our part is to look more specifically at varieties, use of trees, density, and that sort of thing. We cannot recreate what's there. We're all very aware of that. And so I know the city and staff and other departments are working toward a future mitigation plan, and we're anxious to see that get put into place. As far as this is concerned and our approval with this, what we were we see street trees throughout the PUD in each phase, and we see their density, and then also we see the requirement for 2 trees per lot, and the list of 18 varieties that you have there. I think at a 15,000 square foot sized lot, that tree density makes sense. I do think that placement of tree and variety of chosen tree equally are as important with the street tree plan as it is. How we move forward with that is on a 15,000 square foot lot phase, as in phase 1, then we're looking at it solely like that. Front yard, 2 front yard, 1 front yard, 1 backyard, I think is how you have written it, and that is certainly acceptable. Street trees as they are planned. I would be very interested in seeing, certainly as a landscape architect yourself, is a square foot per tree or these varieties with square footage in mind as we move forward through the phases. Even at this phase, if you have a 15,000 square foot lot and you want a backyard tree, here are 6 suggestions. And the oak tree is not one of those suggestions. More of an ornamental sweet bay or cherry or something like that. And then in front, if you happen to have a oak tree as a street tree in front of your house, that is a sufficient tree, we all know, for a 40, 50-year plan for the entire front yard. So then the tree becomes an ornamental or something that's more suitable for the remaining square footage with that street tree in mind. They're all homeowners, and they're going to plant what they would like to plant in the location they'd like to plant them, so we respect that at the same time. But if it's included as we move through these phases, and this being the first phase, these are the best suggestion trees for front yard or rear yard, and then we get to 7,000, then the discussion would be to you again to say, okay, now we're down to 1 tree front or rear, and these are your list here, versus a blanketed, these are 18 phenomenal specimens, and I agree with every one of them, but not necessarily at a 15 square foot or 15,000 square foot use, especially with a willow oak already planted in the front yard. So I think that's what we're concerned about as a design review board. Again, we cannot recreate the density that's there, but we can create a mess in 25 years from now. So we'd like to keep that in mind moving forward, not plant a tree because you have to. Plant a tree that's going to be a lifelong quality tree through the decades. I don't know how we write that in, but that is a little ramble on my tree density.
I nominate you to write that.
But moving forward, that's what we'll be looking for on a phase-to-phase level.
And that's a caution, is that what I take it?
That's,
you're
yes,
saying?
just merely a nudge, I guess, or a suggestion or whatever.
Makes sense.
Yes, I'm certain.
And can I make a comment, is trying to keep the trees away from the houses as much as possible. That's another thing. But let me make it clear, or maybe I'm not clear. In the 15,000 square foot lots, there could be some of those required trees, the 2 trees, be put in the backyard as well. Is that what you're saying, or is, yeah, that's what the applicant wants?
That is correct.
And that's fine with me. I just want to make sure that we don't have to have, on 15,000 square foot lots, we have to have 2 street trees in the front yard.
In this case, we've expanded that to the rear.
Okay,
also.
thanks.
I think those were the only 2 major points brought up, certainly in between the 2 meetings, and I think if anyone has anything further toward either of the 3 items we're approving, I think that's how we have it broken up, A, B, and C, then I would entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion then. Propose that we approve the final plan for Phase 1, 21 lots and common open space for Goodwin Farms PUD.
Second.
Very good. Please call roll.
Mr. Hurley?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Lanweir?
Yes.
Chairman Bruns?
Yes, you have your approval to begin. Congratulations and thank you.
We split them up into 3 motions.
Oh, pardon me.
So
Okay,
tonight
you have your first approval.
The second motion with the landscape plan, and I would like to make a correction in there. It's also saying including centralized mailbox location. That still needs to be considered, so that we need to strike that as being part of the approval for tonight.
Okay,
So that needs to return. And then if you want
Okay.
to add any other language about tree mitigation to that, that would be under this motion, the landscape plan.
okay. Well, so then now we will entertain a motion for B, the landscape plan. And as staff has mentioned, the mailbox portion has been eliminated from this motion. And anything about tree mitigation that has been discussed could be included into this motion.
I'll give it a whirl. All right. Make a motion to approve the Goodwin Farms PUD final landscape plan in regards to tree mitigation with the 15,000 square foot lots, approval being given for the tree species listed and in the number listed. Future phases would have to come back to this committee for reconsideration. And strike the mailboxes from this
We're both going
application.
to say the same thing, I think. But on the mailboxes, I thought we agreed that the mailboxes that they're proposing is fine, but if the city of Germantown has a specific design mailbox, then that would be a requirement. so they don't have to come back to us on the mailboxes.
As long as they meet that.
Yes, as long as they meet what they're proposing or whatever the city comes up with.
And the location needs to still be clarified with the United States Postal Service.
Yes, yes, we understand that,
So
yeah.
that can be done on the administrative.
Yes, yes, that's fine, yeah.
Can I just accept that amendment to my motion?
Very good. Is there a second?
Second, Steve.
Please call roll.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Lanweir?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Hurley?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Chairman Bruns?
Yes. Landscape plan approved. Our final motion for item number 7 is going to include the subdivision entrance feature with signage as presented. Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion to approve Goodwin Farms subdivision entrance feature with signage as presented.
Second.
Very good. Please call roll.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Hurley?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Lanweir?
Yes.
Chairman Bruns?
Yes. Subdivision entrance approved. You have earned all 3 approvals this evening. Congratulations. Is there any old business or new business before us? Hearing none, we are adjourned.